Are the Nets even fair anymore? Let's get into this. Back 2 years ago in the offseason, the Nets acquired Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in a huge win for them. Then this season, when Kevin Durant finally came back and Kyrie and KD were playing together, they acquired superstar shooting guard James Harden. So now the Nets have 3 legitimate superstars. Then the Nets go out and sign Blake Griffin, who was bought out by the Pistons, who's not a superstar anymore, but he's still a pretty good player, I think. And now there are rumors saying that if Andre Drummond is bought out, he's going to sign with the Brooklyn Nets. Now all the players I listed out are all really good players, and you may ask yourself, is this even fair anymore? Back in 2013 when the Miami Heat started their big 3, that was the big 3, and then after that big 3 was over, the Warriors had their big 3. But after Kevin Durant left the Warriors, the NBA was turning back into a duo league, which is kind of fun to watch, where there's no big 3s, it was all just duos. But with the Nets adding James Harden, obviously they started their own big 3, and we might be looking back into that. The Nets have tremendous firepower. They have 3 superstars obviously who can score like crazy, and they also added Blake Griffin, and they also have players off the bench like Spencer Dinwiddie if he comes back this season. The Nets clearly don't have an issue scoring. There's a big concern if James Harden, Kyrie, and KD could all play together in a fluid offense, and so far it looks like they can. The Nets are clearly the most talented team in the NBA by far, by a huge margin. But the biggest thing holding them back from winning an NBA championship would be the defense. A lot of people hold the Nets as championship favorites, which I think is pretty warranted, but the Nets do need to improve their defense, and it looks like they have been a little bit. But if they add a guy like Andre Drummond, I think it might be over for the league at that point. DeAndre Jordan has been the starting center for the Nets this season, and he's been playing alright, but he's kind of old, and I think they should improve on that center position, and they need to improve in order to win a championship. KD and Kyrie have been really good friends for a while, so I don't think it was a really big surprise that they played really well together, but I think it was a surprise that James Harden fit in so seamlessly with those two. Now, if the Nets want to be contenders, they have to look at the biggest challenges they have in the East, and I think that team is probably the Sixers, who've been playing great this season and been led by star big man Joel Embiid. Now, the Nets could put up like 140 points per game, honestly, with the firepower they have pretty easily, but the biggest issue would be Joel Embiid and guarding Joel Embiid, which is the Nets' biggest weakness at the moment, so I think they should look for another center they can add. If it's not Drummond, if they do get Drummond, it's over, but if they get someone who's not as good as Drummond, just like help at that center position, I think it would be needed and warranted. Now, if the Eastern Conference Finals is the Nets versus Sixers, I think the Nets would be favored, and I would probably agree with that assumption, but that's just something they would have to look at. Now, the only other team in the East that I would consider maybe even competition for the Nets would be the Bucks, but I don't really believe in the Bucks. Giannis has proven that he's not able to perform in the playoffs because he doesn't have a jump shot, and I think that really hinders him and the Bucks. So I don't really consider the Bucks as a real competitor to the Nets, but I guess that's another team they could look at. Now, going to the Western Conference, I would consider the Jazz, Lakers, and Clippers as competition for the Nets in the finals if they make it there. I think the Lakers would be the toughest competition for the Nets, and I think followed by the Clippers and the Jazz. The Jazz would probably be the easiest competition for them. It's nothing really against the Jazz, I just think they're too young and inexperienced to win an NBA championship right now, but I think they could in the future, and they're playing extremely well. They're extremely well coached. I think they have a really bright future, and Donovan Mitchell's an absolute star, and he's going to be a star in this league for years to come. Now for the Clippers, I think the Clippers have a real shot to beat the Nets. I wouldn't consider them the favorite, but I do think they have a shot just because they have great defense, and also they have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are superstars in this league, so they also have a lot of firepower. I know last season in the NBA bubble was a huge disappointment, the disappointment of the season, blowing a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets, but I think a lot has changed. They fired their coach, and I think they're a lot better in year 2 than they were in year 1 with more experience playing together. But the Clippers don't really have a dominant big that they can go to and lean on, especially against the Nets, who have trouble against guys like that. So that's a really big problem for the Clippers against the Nets, and if that were the series, that would be the reason why I would say the Nets would be the favorite. Now, moving on to the Lakers, they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, obviously. LeBron has a ton of experience, obviously. He's won championships before, and so has Anthony Davis. He's finally won an NBA championship. But I think Anthony Davis would be the biggest X factor in that series because he's a big man, and the Nets don't really have anyone to throw throw at him. That series, I'm not sure who will be the favorites. The Lakers are the reigning champ, and they have struggled a little bit this season, but that's mainly due to Anthony Davis being out. And I think once it comes to the NBA Finals and the NBA playoffs, it'll be fun. Out of all the possible matchups, I think that would be the most fun to watch and to see what would prevail. Would the Nets offense prevail with their 3 superstars and just insane offense? Or would LeBron pick their defense apart and Anthony Davis also wreak havoc on DeAndre Jordan and any other big the Nets have? That would be a really close series, and I have no idea who would win. I'll just sit back and watch that series. But it is pretty clear the Nets are definitely contenders and have a real shot to win the NBA championship. But they still do have a few flaws, which every NBA team does. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Nets are going to win the NBA championship this season? Or do you think other teams like the Lakers, Clippers, or Sixers, or even Jazz will win this season? But anyways guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out guys.